Accidents can happen anywhere, but mishaps are even more likely perhaps when you're working in a moving boat galley. I'm Carolyn Sherlock, and on this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast, I'll give you 4 tips to help manage the inevitable cuts you'll get in your boat kitchen. Today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by My Island Wi-Fi, your go-to source for secure Bahamas internet. Planning on a visit to the Bahamas and wanting the security of unlimited Wi-Fi? Look no further. Featuring monthly plans with no long-term commitment, My Island Wi-Fi offers unlimited 4G hotspot rentals with no hidden fees or throttling. Visit My Island Wi-Fi, that's MyIslandWiFi.com to reserve your device now. My Island Wi-Fi. Vacation without limits. Okay, cuts and burns are a fact of life in the galley. And while I don't have any great tips when it comes to burns other than be careful, I have learned a few things about dealing with cuts. Now, I'm not a doctor, nor do I have any super advanced first aid training. Obviously, if a medical professional tells you something else, do what they say. This is just my own experience. And there is no substitute for getting some first aid training and having a proper kit. But let's talk about avoiding infections. In the typical heat and humidity aboard a boat, cuts and scrapes are much more likely to get infected. Doubly so if you go for a swim. I know that water looks pure. I've learned the hard way that if you're in the typical anchorage, it's not. Now, the easiest way to avoid infections is to keep a tube of triple antibiotic right next to the sink in the head. Leave it right out where it's an eyesore. And then, every time you wash your hands, dab a bit on any cuts and scrapes that you have. Hands, legs, feet, whatever. Once we started doing this, our cuts and scrapes just never got infected. For cuts and scrapes that look like they might be starting to get infected, it's a good idea to put some triple antibiotic ointment on a Band-Aid and put it over the area. The Band-Aid will keep the ointment in contact with the injury, as well as keeping more dirt out of it. Okay, now, how about a quick bandage? Sometimes something's happening and you just don't have the luxury of going to the first aid box and really taking care of things as you should. Right inside the nav desk, we always kept a roll of duct tape, another one in the dinghy. More than once we just pulled off a piece and stuck it over a cut until we could properly deal with it. I know, medical professionals are going to scream, but it does keep it clean. Okay, keeping Band-Aids on. Another cruiser, a doctor, taught us about tincture of benzoin. You dab it on your skin first, and adhesive bandages stick much, much better, even if you're sweating, washing dishes, or whatever. You can find it at most pharmacies, but you'll have to ask. You can also buy it on Amazon, and there's links in the show notes. Bad cuts. Thinking that you really need butterfly bandages or steri-strips for something, but you just don't have any? You can make your own. I learned how way back in Girl Scouts, back before you could buy such things easily. You start by cutting a piece of tape the size that you want the finished bandage to be. First aid tape is the obvious choice, but you can use anything of your duct tape, electrical tape, and even masking tape. You can also use a Band-Aid. Fold the tape in half, crosswise, with the sticky side out. On the folded end, cut a triangle off each side, leaving a pointed end that is just barely joined to the other half by a section about 1/16 of an inch wide. Unfold the tape and twist the two ends 2 complete turns so that there is a thin, twisted section in the middle. You now have your butterfly bandage. Admittedly, not perfectly sanitary, but if it's the only alternative, it works. Put one half on the skin on one half side of the cut so that the twisted section is right over the cut. Pull gently as you put the other side down on the other side of the cut, holding the two engines together. Now you'll probably have to make more than one butterfly. You want them about 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch apart if possible. Now once you get the butterflies in place, now you did use that tincture of benzoin under them, so they'll stay on, didn't you? You cover it with a traditional bandage with a dab of triple antibiotic on it. Now another option is to use super glue. It's similar to the surgical glue used in many operations, but you can't use the type that says it's formulated not to stick to your skin, because you want it to stick the skin together. You don't want to get your fingers stuck into the wound either. It's a little tricky, and add in the fact that 90% of the time when we get the little tube of super glue out, it's already hard, and I'm thinking that do-it-yourself butterflies are looking pretty darn good. Seriously, I've made my own butterflies quite a few times, and they've worked just as well as the commercial ones. I've never had to have stitches outside of surgery. That's it for this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast. I appreciate you listening in. Help others find us too by leaving a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. Thanks.